place is Carnegie Hall. The date is November 20th, 1934. A brand new American symphony has just brought the audience to its feet. The famous conductor, Leopold Stokowski, calls the composer to the stage and the crowd goes wild, bringing him back time and again for curtain calls. One New York review calls this piece, and I quote, "the most distinctive and promising American symphonic proclamation which has so far been achieved." What was this piece? You might think we're talking about the premiere of a work by Charles Ives, George Gershwin, Aaron Copland, but in fact, the composer of this sensational work was William Dawson, and the title he gave his piece was Negro Folk Symphony. Given its acclaim, you would think that this work would make its composer a famous man. Instead, it dropped out of the repertory for decades.
Not many composers in history really nail a symphony right out of the gate with their first one. And so I think it's just fascinating that this first symphony from a very young Dawson, it's a masterpiece and so brilliantly composed in terms of orchestration, the development, and just the emotional brilliance of the work. The sound world immediately resonated with me, not only as an American, but as a Black American. Growing up in the city of Macon, Georgia, and sitting in the church and hearing my mother sing the spirituals and gospel tunes, the sort of minor or pentatonic modes that's often used in the Dawson. You hear this quite vividly in the piece, and it just really resonated with me. And also the storyline that goes along with the piece. The first movement begins with this horn call, which represents the people of Africa and this sort of link across to African Americans living in the US. The sense of self-discovery that we all sort of have to grapple with. Where do you come from? That's a very powerful message. The second movement, the opening, representing this humdrum of a people kept in darkness. The sort of weight of the whip on the back before you have this long, melancholic English horn solo. Not only is it sad, but you have these moments of joy and exuberance. This woodwind melody that breaks out from the darkness, which represents children, absolutely oblivious to the discourse around them. One thing to take from the symphony is that in the midst of the turmoil that has plagued the African American community from slavery and still what people grapple with today, there's always been a sense of hope, making light of things. And so that is a way to keep yourself alive. And even the atmosphere of hope, which starts the third movement, where it goes to the sense of E flat major.
What do you make of the very end of the piece, the last couple of measures? I mean, this is something that always I find very striking about it, the way it ends with this descending fourth, which almost is like more the beginning of a piece than the end of one.
I believe this comes from when he visited West Africa. The bottom, the very end, represents the sound of these healing drums that he heard. The revision of the piece and the expansion of the percussion section came from him going and traveling through West Africa. It's amazing that Stokowski took this composer's music and championed it, but it needed more champions. But a lot of the African American composers did not have such champions. Dawson certainly experience a great level of perhaps discrimination from the publishers. It was very hard for him to get the piece published, and there was a great demand, actually, after the premiere from many orchestras across the country to do the work. But there were really no parts available. And so there was a waiting period for people to even get their hands on a score and the parts, which Dawson was also very protective of. And I think it just sort of fell out of popularity. I also believe that in this period in which the piece was written, we're coming out of the modernist period, and there's a part of me that thinks this symphony, even though it was revolutionary, especially in terms of African American symphonies taking their place and a huge stride forward, it was perhaps misunderstood and seen as a bit backwards looking in its musical aesthetic. And now this piece is certainly coming back and is being played by a number of major orchestras. The question is, and I suppose the challenge is, will it become a part of the orchestral repertoire, the orchestral canon, or will orchestras play it as a opportunity to say, we've done that, we've checked that box, and move on. But a great piece has to live through time, and that also it evolves through not only great performances, but many interpretations of it. Almost 90 years later, now it has a chance to live and to breathe. I hope that the audience enjoys experiencing the Dawson for themselves and letting it speak to them personally.